portrait photography, there's a lot of different approaches kind of to how you can interact with people, and also how people interact with the lens. So I kind of will get more into that later as well towards the end. So here's an example of some photos that I took in Brazil, where I was staying at a guest house, and I did an exchange with the lady, the hostess of the hotel, and I took some photos for her Airbnb. And this was one of those instances where it was planned. And I'll talk more about that later as well. This is a spontaneous photo shoot that I did. I was on the beach in Brazil and I met someone, a stranger, and I kind of had this idea all of a sudden. And then I asked her, like, hey, can I take photos of you? And she agreed to that. And then we kind of had like a little, yeah, like a little spontaneous photo shoot on the beach. And I kind of got to experiment a little bit with like some more abstract photography, which I like to do as well. So like the one in the middle, for example. Um, yeah. So when we talk about photos, there's rules sort of that you can use as guidelines into how do you structure a photograph, how do you bring certain things to the foreground, to the background. But if you look at like the core of a photograph or what makes a photograph captivating is that it needs to have a subject, and a subject can either be a who or a what. So like for example, in architecture photography, you'll have like a specific detail within the architecture. But when it comes to people, yeah, that'll be your who. It can be anonymous, or you could also have an animal, whether you consider an animal a who or a what. I'm not sure. I think that's different per person. But then there's also the composition as well. So that kind of more talks about the general rules. I can't go through all of them today because there's a lot of different techniques and ways in which you can use it. But generally, if you look at a photograph, you have a frame that you work with, right? And then also you have a goal. So what I mean by that is that a captivating photograph either tells a story or there's a certain intention behind it. So for example, when I take photos for people, my goal usually is to bring the best out of them and for them to feel comfortable so that they can kind of be themselves around me. That's always what I wanted to do when I was taking portraits of other people, and that's kind of how my work ended up resulting in the type of pictures that I have. So when I take photos of people, like I want them to feel comfortable, and then you can see that through my photos as well. It's a process how, how that happens. But there's also other photographers that have a very different goal. For example, they want to highlight like a specific issue or they want to bring a certain topic to discussion. So, I mean, I personally had that as well, where I was, for example, in Ethiopia and I couldn't find the photograph, sadly. I would have loved to show you guys, but it was there was a lot of like trash out in public, and it's something that I kind of find a pity sometimes. So I wanted to bring sort of like this relationship that we have as people with our environment, also in different contexts, kind of more to the foreground. So then that's something that I photographed on purpose. So then you could ask yourself, like, how can I photograph it in a way that, like, the trash, which is the thing that I want to bring to the foreground, is something that becomes obvious in the photo. So starting with the subject, for example, so like as I mentioned, it could be an animal. So like this is one way in which you could sort of bring that to the foreground is to make it like to blow it up, to bring it like to make it really obvious in your face. But there's also other techniques. Color is a really, really nice way to make a photo pop. So I love to work with like contrasting colors. So as you can see, like the subject here, obviously is the man with his scarf. And because the background is like less is more of a nude color, the red really like brings him to the foreground. And now obviously as well you have the aspect of the spikes. You have him kind of like covering his face. So it has like a certain um it kind of captures like brings up a certain curiosity. And maybe like it might raise questions for people. I don't know if what you guys think when you see this photograph, because the story that I mean, like the story behind the photograph and how it got taken. For me, like I know it and I can tell you guys, but I'm really curious to hear from you. Like, what do you think, or like what is this question, like this photo raise for you guys? Maybe you guys are willing to maybe say some things or share some things.
Does anyone want to share something about it, like kind of first impression of the picture? Yeah, for me
If no, that's
personally,
also okay.
for example, my first question was like, yeah, normally you see like women with kind of like a scarf, right? For example, in the
Yeah.
Arabic culture, and also in
Mm-hmm.
some African countries. So then
Yep.
my question mark was first like, oh, is it a woman? But then when you look a
Yeah.
bit closer, the features, like the nose, it looks more like a man. So that
Yeah.
was like kind of my first question, like why does the man have like a scarf? Like is he
Yeah.
nomadic or is it something
I think it's a woman.
tribal? Or is it
Mm-hmm.
a woman or a man?
So it's a man actually in the
Yeah,
photo.
Oh,
it's a man.
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh.
Ah,
So yeah. It was taken in the desert, and it's really
good of
hot.
you, Igor.
Mhm.
Sorry.
No.
Good of Igor that
Yeah,
he
right?
saw that this is the man. Good.
Yeah. So yeah, the photo was taken in the desert and it's like really hot, so a lot of people there they wear scarves to protect their head.
Ah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so nice, thanks.
Mhm.
Yeah. Another rule so that you generally use in photography is the rule of thirds. So if you were to split your screen up into a grid, you kind of always have like three lines. So if you were to divide the photograph in three, you have like the middle part, the right part, and the left part. That goes horizontally and vertically as well. So, kind of have like your grid, and your grid has 9 cubes. So usually where the lines cross each other is where you would want to position your subject. So for example, it could either be completely in the center, which would be like here. If these were my two vertical lines. So you could have your subject in the middle. You could either position them on your like on the right hand side of one of the grids or on the left. And then where this is something that you see through your camera, by the way, where the horizontal lines cross the vertical, you'll have like the outer corners of your box. That's also like a place where you'd want to position your subject. So for example, like when I take a picture of a person, I always try to have their eyes or more like the middle point of their forehead, either like exactly in the point where the horizontal line crosses the vertical line, either at the top or the bottom, or the right or the left, or like exactly in the middle. So it doesn't matter how far or how close the person is, like as a photo gets more wide angled, so like this as a subject gets smaller, you can still sort of try to guide the eyes, because that's what the grid is sort of for, to create focus in your photo. So for example, here, the first thing that you would look at is the person. Is they're kind of like on the most left vertical line. And they're kind of just like below the first horizontal line. And because they're looking away from the camera, your eyes will naturally sort of follow the line from the bottom to the right top towards the building on the right hand side. So like playing with these lines, you can kind of start to create visuals and lines in your photos, working with people, with architecture, but also, for example, um, like with like shapes, for example, like abstract shapes. Um, so for this one, for example, I have like the main subject is kind of closest to the camera. The ones in the background are kind of more far away, and there's like a horizontal line as well, like a diagonal line going from the bottom of the right hand of my screen to the top left hand corner. So if you look at the lines of the people within the photograph, there's sort of like you could draw like a diagonal line. So if you look kind of at a photo, it's usually working with lines, and you're kind of just sort of trying to figure out how to position your subject and your main subject. You can kind of play around with the proportions to sort of create like to create focus. Um, this is another aspect is kind of using like your depth of field. So like for example, here the first thing you would see would be the people going into the distance, and then you have like the mountains going into the distance. So this kind of like your wow factor here would be like the view, and the people are kind of there, that are to sort of guide your eyes into the distance of the like of the trench. I think is the English word, like the trench. Yeah. And this one is again, for example, you have like you have the building on the left-hand side, and then you have the mountain in the background. Another thing that is happening in this photo as well is the contrast, not like within the colors, but within what's happening in the photo itself. So you have like this really kind of yeah, nice building, which is quite well done architecturally speaking, and in the background you sort of have like these slums. So this is creating a visual contrast within the story of itself. So now you're kind of playing more into the storytelling aspect of the picture, as well as really like the structure of the picture itself. And let's see. And this is just like a fun little
Oh, that's
photo.
cool.
Yeah, this is another aspect that you can use in photography as well. This works really well for content creation, is kind of creating an image that is unexpected. Nowadays, the 360-degree cameras are becoming more popular. So the more you start seeing a certain type of thing, the less unexpected it becomes. The same with like AI, for example. Like the first time you see something, it's like, wow, it's really cool. But the more you see it, it becomes less interesting.
Oh, I
Um,
see a question from Juliana. If there are any tips for taking pictures on the move?
on the move, like as in when you are moving um yourself, or when something in front of you is moving?
Oh, that's a good question. Is it about when you move or the surrounding? Or during travel, you mean, Julia? Oh, to someone. If someone is moving, like an action. Ah, yeah.
Action shot, yeah.
Yeah, an
So
action
that has
shot.
that's really getting more into like the technical aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
which has a lot to do with your shutter speed and your settings. Um, we don't have enough time to talk about that now, but I am
Mm-hmm.
working on a course, so building an online course when we get into like the details of that. But when we talk about the movement of a subject, it has a lot to do with your shutter speed. So just to summarize it quickly, the faster someone is moving, so if you want to move if you want to get someone still in an action shot, you need to have like a higher frame per second. So your shutter speed needs to be higher.
So there
Well,
needs to be
smaller
more light in the lens, or
sorry, excuse me.
because there needs to be like more light that's coming in, right,
You need
to
more
the
light,
lens.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And
Then
so
then
how
it's
the
easier
dynamics
to capture.
exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So for example, yeah, well, you can also do it at night, but then you'll get a blurry effect. So like you have different ways of capturing a moving image, because you can get it to the extent where you want to freeze a moving person in time, but you can also do it in a way where like you can see the person moving, so you can see that there was movement, but that the subject itself is like still clear. I can see if I can pull up a photo later to illustrate what I mean by that, because
Oh, awesome.
yeah, once again, like it really depends on light and dark. So it's like it's a whole process of learning the difference between the shutter speed, the aperture, the ISO, and how to get all of that to work together to get the result that you want. But for now, we're just gonna focus kind of on the composition and the aspect of like the interaction between you and the people that you photograph, and composing like an image. So photos for a blog post, kind of just to summarize, like the nice thing about photography is that it's kind of like the art of taking a moment in time and like freezing it. Um and you can do that in many ways. Obviously, like the unique thing about it is like the person that photographs it, but also what's in the frame and what the stories that you want to tell. But also that like the image in itself tells a story. Now the interesting thing is when you have a blog post, you have the combination, right, of text and of photographs. And when you're trying to tell a photo, like a story in one photo, you want to get as much of the story in that one photograph. Whereas if you use multiple photos, so you create a series, that's another way in which you can like sort of tell a story, and that's something that's more applicable for blog posts. So I kind of wanted to go into a little bit more of like the storytelling part of it. It says that the video ending is gonna the
Oh
video
yeah, yeah,
meeting.
we have still like 10 minutes I see, because
Okay,
with
yeah.
the meeting on 40 minutes.
Yeah. So when you want to approach a blog post, I think Igor has more experience in the blog post part of it, but I can tell you a bit more of like the photography side of it. The nice thing about it is that you can use multiple pictures sort of to illustrate a story. And in order to sort of like create that, you want to ask yourself like what the goal is of the blog post, who's the subject of the story, and what's the atmosphere. And now I'm talking specifically about the images and not the text. So for example, like if I'm gonna give you guys an example. Took a trip to a village in Tanzania a few years back, and my goal to go to that place was to sort of just see, like, just to discover how life was there. I had never been to this place before. I wanted to discover that area, and I wanted to just kind of experience what it was like to live like more rurally in Tanzania. So the goal of that kind of like that trip, which imagine if it was a blog post, would be like, what's it like to like live rurally in Morogoro, Tanzania. The subject of the story, up to you guys, like for example, if you want to have a food blog, and it's about you trying different foods, then you would be the subject of the story. Whereas, let's say you want to talk about more about your travels, you could still be the subject of your story, but now the story would become a little bit more, could become a little bit more about, like, for example, the people that you meet in your travels, right? So then you're kind of still the subject, but you're focusing more on, for example, the person that you meet. So then you would be photographing more the people that you meet in that trip. So the way that you want to tell the story is going to determine what kind of pictures you take. So like if it's more about you, you could think more about like, okay, I want to then work with the tripod and photograph myself and have myself in the photos, right? So then you're talking about your self-portraits. Whereas if you know want to make someone else the subject of your story, then or of your photos, then you would be the one photographing, and what people would see in the photos is someone else. And the nice thing also about a series of photos is that they can really show an atmosphere, because you can combine sort of like different snapshots to create the story, using just imagery. So, for example, this is the view of Morogoro, so it kind of gives you like an idea of like how rural this place is. You don't really see any buildings nearby. It's really just like this is the view of the people in the village. Then here kind of have more like snapshots of like sort of like the peace and the tranquility, which is something that I was trying to like illustrate, and also kind of like how the people live there. I'm really interested in like health and food and like plants. So these are the things, and interior design as well. So these are the things that I see when I travel to a place like that, and that's the nice thing about photography is that if someone else came to that same place, the pictures that they would have would be very different than mine because they have different interests and they're trying to tell a different story as well.
And I have a
And
question for
yeah,
you.
go for it.
And how do you like? I can imagine. I see her on the left side. I think it's like a man or a woman. I'm not sure,
It's a
but
woman.
it's a woman. Okay, okay. I was not
Yeah.
sure about it because I know in Sri Lanka they were also like kind of like dresses, the men.
Mhm.
But yeah, like how do you encounter those people? Because I can imagine yeah, some people are maybe shy or they move a lot during the picture. So do you like ask them permission before shooting, or you try to capture them in their natural movements and then you walk to them to show the picture?
I
Like, what's
always
your etiquette of like?
I always ask for
Mhm.
permission. Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Okay, okay.
It becomes trickier obviously when you have more people in your photos, but I
Mm-hmm.
always ask for permission. In this case, like I was also there. I went to Morogoro with someone. I didn't know this person, but he was kind of like the one that was also showing me around. So when you go to a place, there's a lot of things that you can plan for, but most of the things become unplanned. And when you meet one person, you meet the next. So it kind of happens naturally. But for me, it's always important to ask someone permission for taking their photo. There's two ways in which you can do that. I prefer to ask beforehand, but in the case that you want to take like a candid photograph, so one that's spontaneous, that's really like unguarded, you can take the photo beforehand and then go to the person and be like, hey, introduce yourself. I'm a photographer, and I just, saw you in this moment, and like I was inspired to take a photo. I just wanted to show it to you. Is it okay for you that I keep this, or if I use it for my portfolio or something like that, you know?
It's
Um,
a good strategy, I think. I think it's
yeah,
also very nice, like the ethical thing, because
yeah.
like with the etiquette, I meant like your kind of strategy of approach. So it's perfect how
Hmm.
you explained
Yeah.
it, like by like taking a picture in their kind of like a natural movement, and then going to them and showing
Yes.
them the picture and asking like, "Hey, can I use it?" And I think most of the people just find it cool,
Yeah.
right? And maybe they just want as well the
Yeah.
picture. Oh, nice! I love this one as well.
Yeah.
It connects so much
Yeah.
with
So
the
this is the
camera.
Yeah, exactly. And I do like that. This is actually the next part of the
Oh,
presentation
look,
that I
yeah.
had prepared. This is an example of an instance wherein I didn't have the like I didn't speak the language. I didn't have any internet. I couldn't like communicate, and it was something that happened in the moment. In this case, if I were to, so like in this case, what happened is that I took a series of photographs of the boy. I noticed that he didn't really like appreciate it very much. So what I would do in this instance, since I can't communicate with him because he didn't even speak English, you can use photos that are anonymous, because in that way, like you're respecting the person, and you're also sort of just like doing it in a way where like you can still use the photo. So this is like one of those examples wherein I wasn't able to communicate with the person. I was really happy with the photo. Um, and like in the Netherlands, but also abroad, like you can when someone's how do you say that? When you can't identify the person, it's not as big as an issue, but when you can really like identify the face, then it can become an issue. So in this case, like this is a photo that I can use. And I feel okay using as well since I'm not harming the other person. Their identity is not, how do you say that? Like I'm not putting this person at risk through their identity because you can't identify the
Could be
person.
published, right? In this
Um,
situation, a travel magazine. Actually, I love this picture. It's
yes,
very creative because you could like put it like on, like inside National Geographic or Columbus magazine.
yeah.
That's something
I
very
also think that like
special.
when you have the intention of publishing it, because that wasn't my intention when I was taking this photo, when you have the intention of publishing or you're really like taking a photo beforehand with the intention of doing so, then there's also you also have to become more aware of like, you know, what then I think it becomes even more important to communicate with the person, like, hey, I'm a photographer and like I've been captured in magazines and like, you know, then it becomes more serious. And then I think it's even more important in that case to communicate and to take these things into account, you know, so like having to do with the identity of the person. You also legally are not allowed to sell photos when the identity of the person is visible and traceable and you don't have their permission. So in
That's a
this case,
very
like
important thing to know, as like travel photographers, to basically to know like what you can publish and that you need sometimes permission in a private setting, right? And in the environment, you can sometimes capture a picture. Oh yeah, we need to like close the call like in
yes,
30 seconds. So I
perfect.
see Maisha shared here like her Instagram. You can take a shot. And if there are any questions, we can use the same link to log in again. It's just for like to stop the recording. So
Yeah,
please follow her so you can support her work. And you can use the same link to jump in again to ask questions. And then also for your own privacy. So then I can turn off the recording now. There we are.